So, what are we shaped by? There's been a long-lasting debate about what determines a person's behaviors and how they're going to be when they grow up. And what are they going to be thinking? What are their viewpoints? And these things, are they determined by our nature or how we're nurtured? Now, I'm sure you've heard this debate quite a bit, and both sides have pretty strong claims to say which one it is. Like for nature, for instance, they say that all the factors that we have of who we are, we're just born with. Genetics, characteristics, our behaviors, everything is just what we're born with. It's just genetic. It's just there. So whatever we have that's been passed down from our parents, generation to generation, it's just already there, and that's what just determines everything for the rest of our life. Now, nurture, on the other hand, says, well, really our minds are a blank canvas when we are born. And then pretty much all of our experiences, the things we learn, what we're taught, all that makes us who we are. And so they have these different debates on both sides. And there are actually plenty of people who say, well, maybe this isn't necessarily an either or, it's a both and. Yes, there are certain things that are just in us, that's in us genetically, but then there are also certain things that we can learn, and that helps us develop who we are. Because yes, we may look at things like, we have our hair color, our height, our skin color, all those things are just kind of determined by nature. We have that in us. But then nurture says we can learn, right? So there's certain things that we can learn, like different fears that we have. Like for instance, I have a fear of roaches because when I was a young child, one decided to launch an aerial assault on my face. And because of that, they're all evil and they should die on sight. Hate those things. Yes. Oh man, my people. So happy to hear this. But when we continue to look at this from even a biblical perspective, it continues to make sense as well. Because when we look at it, the both and thing makes a lot more sense, because if we look at our lives, we're all bent towards sin. We're born into a sinful world. We're bent towards that. We will all sin eventually because we're born into this fallen world. But what we do is we do learn that we don't have to be held down by that sin. We don't have to be shackled to that sin because we know about Jesus. And we learn about Jesus, and we learn the way he wants us to live and how to pray and how to go about our lives. And so the Holy Spirit can continue to transform us from the inside out. So all those sins that we've committed doesn't have to hold us back anymore. Doesn't have to hold us captive anymore. And so when we look at this, debate nature versus nurture, yes, it intensifies, but when we look through it, really what people are trying to figure out is, can nurture aspect, can that actually overcome whatever nature has? Can it? That's really the debate, and that's where people are like, no, you can't overcome nature. There's nothing you can do. But then others says, no, we believe you can overcome it. So let's pray, and then we'll continue. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the time to be here in your house, to be able to learn from you, to be able to worship you with all that we have, to be able to come together as brothers and sisters, just to be in your presence and be able to just give you all that we have this morning. Thank you so much for your words, and as we continue to study in the book of Exodus, that we'll continue to see what you have for us, what you want us to learn from your words and your story to us. Thank you for your Son. In his name I pray, amen. Now as we dig into chapter 2 of Exodus, we're going to see the beginning of Moses' story here. And there's a lot that happens, and we'll see Moses really start to struggle with this nature-nurture thing, and his story begins complex, and he struggles with probably who he is because of this complex life, this complex beginning. And so it does start to shape him, start to shape who he is and what he thinks, and we see by the end of this, if you know Moses' story, this is no spoiler, but he ends up not really knowing what to do, so he just figures the best thing for me to do is to run. And so chapter 2 will give us a setup for the following chapters, because there's a lot of stuff that Moses has to deal with and to overcome. But the great thing about it is when we know Moses' story, when we see his background, and then we see what God does, we see how amazing he is to help Moses through this. But we really have to understand where Moses comes from. So Exodus chapter 2, starting in verse 1. Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son. And when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got him a wicker basket and covered it over with tar and pitch. Then she put the child in it and set it amongst the reeds by the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to find out what would happen to him. So a quick reminder from last week is we have Pharaoh. We talked about he is just terrified about the potential of these Hebrews that are living in Egypt, that if someone decides to come to war, that they're going to side with them and then overthrow the Egyptians. So he's completely scared. So he's trying to stop them from multiplying, stop them from having these babies, right? So he says, okay, let's just work them like crazy. Maybe they're too tired to actually make more babies. But that doesn't stop. They continue to multiply. And then he tries to get the midwives of the Hebrews to say, hey, anytime you see a son, kill it right then and there. But the midwives didn't do it. So they kept multiplying, and the midwives were blessed because of it. So they didn't do it. So then Pharaoh, what he does is he says, hey, all Egyptians, everywhere you see a baby Hebrew, baby boy, take it and throw it into the Nile. Now, that doesn't make you feel like, ugh, like gross. Like, they're just picture that, adults grabbing babies and throwing them into a river. This is what he commanded his people to do. Because he couldn't stop the Hebrews from multiplying. He couldn't get the Hebrews to stop themselves. So he tells everyone, do this. And so babies are being killed. And what happens here is that this is what Moses is born into. This is his climate. Like, he's born into, he could be dead immediately. So his mother, of course, as we read there, she tries to hide him. And when she does everything she can to save her son's life. She puts him in this basket and she puts him on the bank, on the reeds there. So I know it's a great movie, Prince of Egypt, but this idea of this basket's floating around and almost crocodile-like, that didn't happen. Great for movies. But it's sitting there in the reeds, right? It's sitting there. And I don't know what's going through this mom's mind. I mean, I can't imagine, she's trying to save her son's life. And she's trying to figure out a way to save him. And so I don't know what her plan is. We have no idea. Is she planning, okay, well, I'll put him here. I'll go and do work, come back, check on him, feed him if need to, whatever. I'll go back to work. Maybe at night I can get him out, bring him home. I don't know. I'm just guessing. We have no idea, but apparently she has some kind of plan because she's like, I've got to save my son. I got to wait till he's old enough to where they're not going to kill him. And this is what she's trying to do. And what ends up happening, which is a little ironic, but it happens again, just like before where Pharaoh tried to use the midwives, who are these agents of life, bringing life into the world. He tried to turn them into agents of death. Now the Nile, which is used for death, is going to be used to save Moses' life. So once again, just showing God's will can't be stopped no matter what Pharaoh does. But Moses is put into this basket. He's put here. His sister's watching, trying to be like, what's going to happen to him? Oh, we got to know what's going to happen. I want to see. And then what we start to see is the hand of God working. Verse 5. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the Nile, with her maidens walking alongside the Nile. And she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid, and she brought it to her. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the boy was crying. And she had pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women so she may nurse the child for you? Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go ahead. So the girl went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed him. The child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses and said, because I drew him out of the water. So here we have already crazy things happening in Moses' life. So we see, yes, he's born of the Levites. The Levites were one of the tribes of Israel. And so he's born, he is a Hebrew. And then this is the climate he's born into, and he gets picked up by Pharaoh's daughter. Now we see here that she's gone to the Nile to bathe. Now tradition holds that Pharaoh's daughter went down there not for hygienic reasons. It's not she just needs to get clean for the day. She actually went down to bathe for ritualistic reasons. See, because the Egyptians believed that the Nile had cleansing powers that could cleanse you physically from illnesses, especially skin diseases. If you had anything going on with your skin, you bathe in the Nile had those healing powers, it would get rid of it. But they also used it for cleansing spiritually. And as the tradition goes, Pharaoh's daughter went down to cleanse herself from the sins of her father because he was committing idolatry. And the idolatry she's trying to cleanse herself from was the idea that she saw that her father was trying to elevate himself higher than the gods by his actions of trying to stop the Hebrews and trying to kill these Hebrew children. And so if this tradition holds true, and it does really seem to make a lot of sense that why not only she went down to bathe in the Nile to find the child, but that when she sees Moses there and hears his cries, she has compassion on him. See, because she didn't approve of what her father was doing, and her disapproval led her to the Nile where she found Moses. So in her attempt to cleanse herself, she is presented with an opportunity to do the opposite of what her father was doing, to save the life of this Hebrew baby instead of taking the life of the Hebrew baby. And so we see that this is what's happening, and this makes a lot of sense, that we see in God's hand that could be working here. And then now, because of Moses' sister, we see God continuing to work, because she's like, hey, opportunity knocks, right? I can get someone to nurse that baby for you, and gets Moses' mom. And then not only that, she's getting paid to take care of her own child. I'm sure every parent's like, that would be nice. Get paid to take care of my own child? But this is how we just see, even though in this horrible circumstance, we're seeing God's hand still working through Moses' life. Now, what we're at here, though, is that Moses is born a Hebrew. He's born the son of these Levites. But now he's also the son of an Egyptian. He's a Hebrew and an Egyptian. His story starts to take shape, but the question is like, what shape will it be? Like, will he be a full-fledged Levite and a Hebrew? Or will he be Pharaoh's daughter? Will he just be an Egyptian? What's going to have the most effect on Moses? Now, this is where I start to, when I look at my life and I try to look at here what was going through Moses, it's just like, man, I kind of understand what Moses probably went through growing up. Because for me, I'm born Jacksonville, Florida, born here in America, but born to Puerto Rican parents. I'm Puerto Rican, so at home I'm growing up completely Puerto Rican culture, but then anytime I leave my home for any reason, I'm completely in American culture. And then different things would happen, like, for instance, I would say, oh yeah, have you been to Miami? And then Miami, and my friends would be like, Miami, what's wrong with you? It's Miami. And I'm like, no, it's Miami. Like, no, it's Miami. And me and my friends are arguing in my room. Finally, my dad hears it. He comes over and he goes, guys. He's saying it in Spanish. You guys just, and he tells me, he's like, that Miami is in English. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea. There was so much stuff that I had to just continue to learn because my parents, I mean, you guys know, like they barely knew English, right? When they got here, when they had me. So I was completely in this Puerto Rican culture. That's what my family was, but I also had to grow up in the American one. So then there's this kind of tension where I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, well, exactly how am I supposed to act and do things? Like, I didn't really know because, at home, it'd just be like, okay, Poppy, okay, Mommy, okay, this, okay, whatever. But then it's like, when I'm talking to an American, it's like, I better say yes, sir, no, sir. I had no idea until I got in trouble for not saying yes, sir, no, sir. Like, I didn't understand the different culture. So then when I tried to understand that culture better and, better acclimate myself in American culture, then I would have my Puerto Rican family make fun of me for being too American. And I'm like, oh, dear heavens, what am I supposed to do, right? So there was always that tension through me. And there was these stages that I had where I was like, well, maybe I need to be more Puerto Rican. But then it was like, when the American just didn't understand me, it was, okay, well, maybe I just need to be more American. And then that didn't feel right, and I just didn't really know. So I really struggled with my identity. What am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to just pick one side or the other? What am I supposed to do? So there was a struggle growing up. And I'm sure you want to hear, okay, well, Efren, how did you sort it all out? Well, I'm going to save that because it just seems like there are a lot of things in my life mirrors Moses' life in different ways. So in the next couple sermons, you'll see how I figured it out. So just keep coming back if you want to hear the rest. And just to forewarn you, this sermon kind of ends on a cliffhanger too because the Bible does. So you're going to have to just keep coming back. But what we'll see is that God has plenty to say about our identity. He has plenty to say about it. And that's what we're going to be uncovering over the next couple weeks. But here we have Moses in the same way torn between two cultures. He's a son of two cultures. He struggles with identity, not knowing which one he's supposed to cling to or embrace. Like, what is he supposed to do? Does he act and live like an Egyptian? Or does he abandon that upbringing and align himself with his people, with the Hebrews? And one thing is that when you struggle with that, it's just really hard because it's like, man, who am I supposed to be? And that's one of the biggest struggle most people struggle with. Who am I supposed to be? And usually when we struggle with this, it ends up leading to some bad decisions or not so good ones. I know I made them, trying to figure out which world I'm going to be living in. I know others who have made the same struggles, and what we'll see is that Moses makes some bad decisions as well, trying to figure out where he's going to land. Verse 11. Now it came about in those days, when Moses had grown up, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw that there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He went out the next day, and behold, two Hebrews were fighting with each other. And he said to the offender, "Why are you striking your companion?" But he said, "Who made you a prince or judge over us? Are you intending to kill us or kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and said, "Surely the matter has become known." So Moses here growing up in the palace, growing up as an Egyptian. And even though he grew up that way, obviously he knew who he was, he knew who his people were, probably knew how he came about to be living in the Egyptian palace. But it seems that he had made a decision. We don't really know the whole thought process, but he at least made a decision that even though he's been raised an Egyptian, he doesn't approve necessarily what the Egyptians are doing, so he's going to side with his people. This is why when he's out looking, he's just like, man, like look at how hard my people have to work. Man, he didn't like that. So then when he saw an Egyptian beating one of his brethren, he looks around, makes sure no one's watching, right? And he kills him. Because he felt like I have to stick up for my people. Again, we don't have any information about this. Maybe he felt guilty, or maybe he felt like, hey, I'm the only one in a position to do something about this. Like, we don't know. We can only guess. But at the end of the day, he said, I have to do this. I have to defend my brethren. Now, I even understand this because when I was in high school, I had a couple friends that were friends of mine from such elementary school, and there was one friend picking on a newer friend that I had whose name was Oscar, a fellow Puerto Rican. And they were messing and they were picking on him, and I come over and I'm just like, whoa, y'all need to cut this nonsense out. Now, my friends who have been my friends since elementary school, they looked at me and they're like, yo, what? Because they expected me probably to come alongside them because I'm their friend. They're like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, nah, man, y'all gonna leave Oscar alone. It ain't gonna be like that. And they just, no, come on, dude. We're just messing with them. Like, no, it ain't, because I felt like, no, this is a Puerto Rican. Like, I got to defend one of my own. Even though these guys are like, consider me one of their own. And so here I was torn. And it was kind of weird because I was like, I felt like I had to do that. Like, it had to be me. Because I knew both of them, so I had to be the one to step in and say, no, absolutely not. Now, thankfully, it didn't get to any fists flying or anything. I just like stood up like, no, absolutely not. But it did alienate me a little bit from those friends I had from elementary school. Now, honestly, I probably could have handled it a little better, but I didn't really know what I was thinking. It was just kind of this thing inside me that just said, I have to do this. And so I can't really explain it. And I just feel like maybe this is where Moses is at, where he sees one of his own people being mistreated and maybe feeling this sense of loyalty to him. That's when he looks around and he's like, I have got to intervene. But of course, Moses takes it way too far. He tries to take matters. He tries to take that justice in his own hands, which isn't how it's supposed to be done. But he does this because he feels like he has to save one of his brethren. Even though this Egyptian might have also seen him as a brother, as one of theirs, but this is what he felt he had to do. So he's torn between these two worlds. And in an effort to fully belong into at least one of these worlds, he ends up alienating himself and killing the other one. And what happens? When he goes to these two brothers, right, these two Hebrews that are arguing, having some kind of confrontation. Maybe Moses came and thought like, yes, I now have a right to speak into their life and say, hey, you guys, y'all shouldn't be doing this. Man, you guys should be sticking together. You guys should be more worried about the Egyptians, not each other. Maybe he thought they would listen to him. But what happens is one of the men looks at him with contempt and says just pretty much like, who made you ruler over us? Well, are you going to kill us too? So the world that Moses chose, that he said, I'm going to be a part of this world, has now turned on him. They saw what he did. They know that he killed someone. They're like, you're going to do the same thing for me? So this world that he chose didn't even accept him. And even though he was looking to be accepted by the Hebrews, he wanted to identify with the Hebrews, at the end of the day, he was still shaped by Egyptians. And this is where people think that this is probably what led him to murder, not just anger and feeling this need to stick up for his own, but with Egyptian morals and Egyptian thinking coursing through him, it's probably what made him believe that, yeah, I can do this and it's okay. And so that's why he did it. And then, so to make things worse, the people that he wanted to be accepted by couldn't accept him because they did see him as too much as an Egyptian. So now these two worlds that Moses wanted, or the one that he wanted, the one he wanted to get away from, but these two worlds he became up in just, now he has no world to live in. Even though he's trying to disassociate himself from the Egyptians, he was still shaped by them. And because of that, his own people couldn't accept him. But this is what happens. Because when we chase acceptance from the world instead of acceptance from God, we'll find ourselves lost and alone. In verse 15, we'll see what happens next. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. And when the world we want so badly rejects us, we end up running. And we run because we know this world doesn't want us, but because of stuff we did to try to get into that world, what ends up happening is we start thinking, well, I guess God doesn't want me either. Because I can't tell you how many times that I've heard someone who has, ran from God, ran from the church. And then eventually they come back and they're just like, man, I'm so sorry I haven't been around. Listen, I've been going through a lot of stuff. I've been struggling with stuff. I know the things I've been doing are things I shouldn't be doing. And honestly, Efren, I couldn't face you. I couldn't face the church. I didn't want you to be mad. I didn't want you to be disappointed. I didn't want to hear it from people in church. I just figured God was already mad and disappointed. I just felt too guilty, which is why I've been away from so long, which is why I've ignored your text and your phone calls, which is why I haven't just been around. But then they say, but now I have nowhere else to turn. I don't know what to do. And see, what I've seen is again and again, people that long for this acceptance from the world, from certain communities in this world, that even though they may have it for a little while, the second they step out of line, that world rejects them. And then because of that, they just feel like, well, I can't go back to God because there's no way he'll take me back. This is what Satan likes to tell us. So instead, they run and hide. And they try to get away from it all because they just don't know what to do. And then like Moses, wanting that different world, that different life, he made a decision that he thought would bring him acceptance into the world he wanted. And that's what we do. We make decisions that we say, okay, this is what I want to do, right? But Moses, that world rejected him, that world abandoned him, and the world he wanted abandoned him. So here he is, lost, scared, confused, and alone. I do always wish that these people who've told me those things, I wish they would have just came to me, right? I would have thought that they knew that they could just come to me and that my heart would have just broke for them and I would try to help them, that I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be disappointed. Just talk to me. Just talk to me and let me help you. I wish they would have known that and they would have let me help them instead of continuing down this path that they're now just filled with regret and they're alone and they just don't know what to do. But the problem is when we are blinded by the desire to be accepted by this world, it blinds us from the God that wants us in his world. That's what happens. Because we're so blinded. Because we want to be a part of this world. We want to be, there's a certain community, right? That we're like, hey, I really, really want to be a part of this community. I really want to be in this community. So we do things to be accepted by them. At the beginning of the sermon, I asked, what are we shaped by? Is it nature? Is it nurture? And I'd like to add a third option here. We are also shaped, I would think, by our desires. And we talked about in the past, our desires move us to action, right? Like what we do, what we think, how we see the world is affected by our desires, the things that we are chasing. So if we desire to be accepted by certain communities, we'll change the way we act, the way we think, what our interests are, the way we look. Like our priorities will all change because we say, hey, if I'm going to be a part of this group of people, I need to look like them, I need to act like them, I need to think like them. So we'll change everything so they will accept us. But if our desire is to be a committed follower of Jesus, then everything about us will change as well to make that desire happen. We'll want more of Jesus. We'll want more of His Word. We'll want to worship Him more. We'll want to seek Him. We'll want the Holy Spirit to transform us. We'll want all these things because we want Jesus. So yes, nature and nurture have plenty to do with how we are shaped. But I say we also can't forget about desire. Our desires will shape us too. And honestly, if our desire isn't to be a committed follower of Jesus, day in, day out, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, if that's not our desire, and our desire is to chase something in this world, to be a part of this world, that's just going to leave us lost, scared, confused, and alone. So if you're here today and you're even thinking, man, maybe I'm a little bit like Moses. I'm already feeling lost. I'm already running. I'm already scared. I'm already alone. Like, would God even care? Listen to this, verse 23 of chapter 2. Now it came about in the course of those many days, the king of Egypt died. And the sons of Israel sighed because of the bondage, and they cried out. And the cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So God heard their groaning. God remembered His covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the sons of Israel, and God took notice of them. The Hebrews, they've been enslaved, been forced into hard labor. They're in bondage through no fault of their own, really. And then we have Moses here who is stuck between these two worlds, and he's trying to really figure things out. He's trying to make an effort, and he takes matters into his own hands, and this just leads him down a road that makes him feel lost, scared, confused, and alone. So here we have Moses, here we have the Hebrews, both feeling alone, just crying out, man, I don't know what to do. Like, why are we in this situation? Moses, chasing to be a part of a world, loses it all. And he's thinking like, man, what to do? This man who's been shaped by Egyptians and Hebrews, but now both reject him, now what? Everything he's ever known, everything he's desired has been shaped by this, and that people are saying, you're not one of us. Like, now what? And maybe we're feeling the same way, like, now what? What do we do now? I've done these things. Does God still want me? Like, what do we do? I think the good news is God has entered the chat.